Oh, golly. Put on some squeaky shoes, why don't you? Jesus Christ. Okay. Hey, everybody, it's Jeffrey St. George back with another segment of Thinking Shakespeare. So, this is another episode of Things for the Thought On. So, these are little tidbits of information that Barry wants us to know but didn't think was worth a whole chapter. So, item number 1, abutted consonants. What is an abutted consonant, Jeff? Well, it is when you have a consonant sound at the end of a word that is the same as the consonant sound at the beginning of the next. And this way they are said to be next to each other and or abutted. So what am I supposed to do with these abutted consonants, Jeff? I've never heard of this concept before. Well, so there's two schools of thought, and they're directly contrary to one another. How fun is that? So school of thought number 1 is that you should combine the consonants so it more or less becomes one word. You blend one word into the next, and in that way you make both words special. Oh, I love special words. The other school of thought is that you distinctly separate them. And in this way, you make the second word more stressed. So an example would be more rich, right? I combined the consonant R to make more rich. Alternatively, if I were to separate them out, it would sound like more rich. Right? I put a big old space in between those two words. And in that way, it made the second word stand out more. So what am I supposed to do, Jeff? Calm down. Take a breath, and remember, Shakespeare made rules so he could break them. Shakespeare's rules he breaks all the time. And so if you are constraining your work to simple truisms and rules, that's not going to be very practical for you in the long run. Keep your mind open to artistic expression. Both of these different styles are fabulous in their own way. If I wanted to bring the stress into both words, I'd absolutely put those consonant sounds together. If I wanted to stress that second word, I'd tear them apart in a heartbeat. It's up to you and your artistic sensibilities to make the determination between the two. Good for you. The next thing that Barry wants us to talk about is the 3-part build. If you might know this as lists or perhaps ladders. So Shakespeare very frequently in his writing combines ideas one after the other after the other. Now he can do this in two ways. He can just make it a list with words separated by a comma. So and in this way it's very compact. Or he can spread it out, so it's a full verse line idea, or 2 verse line idea, or 3 verse line idea, and so it builds through the monologue. Now, how do you use a build? So a build, you progress through, you build towards the end, you endow greater energy. So what does endowing greater energy mean? One interpretation could be that you get louder, right? That's an option. It's not necessarily always a very entertaining option. You could become more intense, you could become more thoughtful or reverent or moved, right? All of these other words work very well for a 3-part build. The point is, what you want to avoid is doing all 3 things the same way, because that's horribly boring. Okay, so we're going to do 2 examples of this. The first, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Thus creeps this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. Okay, I'm going to keep this in here because this is a very good learning moment. What I did that was very bad was I did not breathe at the end of the verse lines. I tried to get that whole line in one breath because I thought of it as one thought. Now let's see what happens if I break it up a little bit. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. Right? I felt much more supported. I felt by giving myself the moment to have these ideas that the text was much more interesting. Right? So that's a previous lesson that came in handy right here. Back to this lesson though. What's the 3-part build in this? So tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Look at that. 3 words placed right next to each other. That's a list, right? Even though they're all the same, that's considered a list. And so you're supposed to build through those. Now you see what I did. I didn't necessarily get louder, but I did get more sentimental. I got more withdrawn. I got a little more thoughtful. Maybe not the strongest choice to make. The next set of lists that you see here creeps in this petit pace from day to day. And what's the last part of that list? To the last syllable of recorded time. In this case, it's the last syllable. That completes the list. And we draw this conclusion by the fact that to the last syllable is antithetical to day. How is that the opposite of day to day? It's not the opposite. You didn't watch the antithetical video if you think antithesis is strictly opposite. It's not. It's because it's being brought into direct comparison to the word day, right? We have one unit of time, and then the last syllable is another unit or measurement of time, and in this way they're being compared, and in this way we can call them antithetical. Oh my god. So, how in the world were you supposed to spot that in the wild? Well, here's the thing. Shakespeare builds typically in a set of 3. Typically. Shakespeare breaks rules all the time. So if you see a set of 2, keep your eye out for the third. Keep your mind open to what the third could be, and you might surprise yourself and find something interesting. Now, the next one that we're going to do demonstrates Shakespeare breaking his thoughts out into much larger chunks. Oh, if I wake, shall I not be distraught, environed with all these hideous fears, and madly play with my forefather's joints, and pluck the mingled tybalt from his shroud, and in this rage with some great kinsman's bones, as with the club dash out my desperate brains. Right, so what is the build here? Well, clue number 1, it's separated by the words and again. So, and madly play with my forefather's joints, and pluck the mangled tybalt from his shroud, and in this rage with some great kinsman's bones, as with a club dash out my desperate brains. Right, you can see these ladders, they're big, they're long, they're glorious. Shakespeare's giving you the energy to ramp up, to go absolutely insane by the end of this monologue, because Juliet's losing her shit. Okay, so that's enough about the 3-part build for now. Surely we'll cover it again some other day. The last thing that Barry wants us to talk about is when did Shakespeare do his writing? So there is a thought out there that Shakespeare is always iambic pentameter. And if he's not iambic pentameter, you need to shove it until it fits into iambic pentameter. And that is not a good thought. Shakespeare has 4 periods. We call them early, middle, mature, and late. Now, in Shakespeare's early period, he very much abided by the form and the rules surrounding iambic pentameter. The stress patterns fell very neatly, all the lines were 10 syllables, and this way it was very, very straightforward. And that rule, that guideline would apply very well. But by the time we get to late Shakespeare, Shakespeare has mastered iambic pentameter and has cast off the restrictions. He does not restrain himself to an iambic syllable pattern. He does not restrain himself to a 10-syllable line. If he wants to use 11 syllables, he's going to use 11 syllables. If he wants to do 9, he'll do 9, and he does it to incredible effect. Some of late Shakespeare is some of the most striking and strident Shakespeare that exists because it is so messy and gritty, and I'm getting a little passionate. So between early Shakespeare and late Shakespeare, there is a transition. And so Shakespeare was a constantly evolving writer. To try and shoehorn Shakespeare interpretation into such a tight confine as it is always 10 syllables is not a productive use of your time. I think that's probably it for this video, everybody. Thank you so much. We're going to be moving on to a new chapter next time. Have a great day.